already studied. This is a summary of what we have already studied. And hopefully we are quite familiar with some of these points which are going to be brought up. I was even thinking of not going over these last few slides and just going to the end 2 chapters. But then I changed my mind at the last minute. I thought, well, I've done the whole book. Why not? Why miss this last part? So just bear with us. This part.
No, it's good. Yeah, I was thinking it's good to do the whole, like, recap of the whole thing. It will be good, I think.
So
if
that's
okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. So it will be good. Yeah, it'll be good. So anyway, I was deciding what to do, how to go about it. So let's go ahead then. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Putale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pshaline Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashtatara Satanine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Now I just want to find what slide I am on here. Here. Okay, let me just go the long way around. Okay, how we've described this, isn't it? Remember this, the principles of mellows, spiritual and immaterial is a reflection of the spiritual mellows. And we're trying to replace our original mellows with the mellows in relationship to the material world. And thus we're in the cycle of birth and death. Yeah. The inclination to hear is natural, so she was directed towards Krishna. About this whole Suddha Bhakti Cintamani has been about the different levels of faith and the different levels of consequential spiritual practice and consequential hearing and reading what specific subjects are suitable for what specific devotees. Yeah. And this is where I want to start off from today. So we're going to be just looking at today different books that different devotees should read or different subjects. And we're going to actually give the names of the books that are recommended or not recommended as the case may be. So we begin with this quote. This is from Prabhupada lecture, 1974. This Bhagavad Gita is the ABCD knowledge. This is entrance examination. Matriculation examination. School leaving examination. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the graduate study. So when you become graduate in spiritual knowledge, then you can understand Srimad Bhagavatam. And when you have passed your bachelor degree and you're a postgraduate, that study is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Prabhupada had an expectation of the different levels of study that devotees will reach according to where they are in spiritual life. So Bhagavad Gita is the ABCDs. Now, it doesn't mean if we've reached and we're able to happily read Chaitanya Charitamrita and to understand it to some degree that we don't read Bhagavad Gita. That's not what's meant there. We should always be reading Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That will always be there. But as we advance and as devotees become more learned in the philosophy, then they will be able to appreciate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita as well. Anyway, this is a quote from Prabhupada. He gives like different levels of reading. We have the entrance examination, the graduate, and then the bachelor study. So obviously when you're preaching to devotees, new people, you get some idea of where to direct them. Yeah. Well, for some people, it may mean that you're going to direct them to reading Science of Self-Realization. Even there's books before Bhagavad Gita for some, the small books, Science of Self-Realization, etc. So you're meeting different persons, and so you just keep this in mind sure many of you are aware of these points already. And down. I keep losing this slide. Okay, there we go. Okay. Now, so basically, the knowledge about Krishna, it becomes more comfy. Did I spell that right? Excuse me. More, that's better. It becomes more confidential. In other words, more is actually revealed. Actually, more detail becomes revealed. And that may take many lifetimes, actually. Like, for example, you saw like Christians and Muslims, for example, they are more or less absorbed in Krishna's awe, not Krishna's, but yes, Krishna's, but in awe and reverence. They'd have no concept of the personality of God, which is a bit more personal. So as you advance in God consciousness, more detail gets revealed. Yeah, more information gets revealed. There's that quote that we sometimes hear that Jesus said, so much is there, but you're not ready to hear it. You've heard that one? So much is there, but your ears are not ready. So the devotees often quote that in regards to the access that we have to the wonderful details about God himself, you know. So ultimately, God consciousness, it ultimately means to become conscious of the personality. Yeah, who and where he resides. Where does he reside? On the topmost planet. And what's he doing there? He's a cowherd boy. Wonderful, sweet cowherd boy. The Prince of Raj, you know. So it gets more and more, and so more and more confidential. Then particularly noticeable is his intimacy with his friends, with the nectar devotion, Sakiras. Then we have parent, Vatsalya Bhav, then especially conjugal, his wives and paramours, also known as the gopis. It's a little bit more intimate, a little bit more confidential. Yeah. Now, the least confidential is the knowledge is the Purusha avatars. Yeah. Who are the Purusha avatars?
Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So then there's the Lord's Leela incarnations. What's an example of Leela incarnation?
Lord Ram,
Yeah, that's it. Lord Ram,
Chitadev, Lord
Matsya,
Krishna,
Koma, Nush, yeah,
Varaha.
yeah. So this is a little bit more confidential. And then even more confidential is the Lord's human-like, his own human-like adventures with, in the case of Lord Ramachandra. And then even more confidential is Krishna's pastimes. And then that in itself becomes more confidential. His pastimes in Dwarka, they're more confidential in Mathura, Vrindavan, and then with the gopis. Yeah. So these here, they're so confidential that only devotees at certain levels of faith and qualification can hear the details of these pastimes here. Yeah, one should be at least at the stage of nishta, being in control of oneself. Yeah, of the mind and senses. Yeah. So, and yeah. So what happens to persons who hear subjects beyond their qualification, like the concluding verses of Raslila, for example? Sukadev Goswami was speaking Raslila, yeah, to like all these sages. Yeah. He was absorbed in tasting the nectar of Krishna's intimate pastimes. But Parikshit Maharaj, he saw that many of the sages, they weren't pure devotees. They were karmis and gyanis, and they was having doubts about what Sukadeva Goswami Maharaj was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. Yeah. Especially his intimate dealing with the gopis and other men's wives. Yeah, because they saw that as they couldn't understand. They saw that as a transgression of religious principles. So therefore, Maharaj Parikshit very tactfully asked Sukadeva Goswami a question to steer the conversation in a different direction. Yeah, and he said this here. Parikshit Maharaj said, "Oh Brahmana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of the universe, has descended on this earth along with his plenary portion to destroy irreligion and establish religious principles. Indeed, he is the original speaker, follower, and guardian of moral laws. How then could he have violated them by touching other men's wives?" So in other words, he's asking Sukadeva Goswami to stop speaking about it and now explain what is the best understanding here. Yeah, because they consider it to be irreligious acts. Yeah. So, but because they found it confusing, because how could someone like Sukadeva Goswami, who's such he's an impeccable character, the highest stage of purity and a detachment from the world, some of them couldn't understand why he was speaking like this. In other words, they did not have the qualification. Yeah. So instead of they would have caused doubt. It was causing doubt in these persons. So therefore, we must, just reading from here, devotees must therefore carefully select the subjects that they present to the audience. Sometimes it's a challenge. It can be a challenge because if you're like I have the service sometimes of giving classes, so sometimes it's a real challenge because the audience is mixed. It's mixed, so you really have to depend on Krishna sometimes. Well, not sometimes, all the time. When I had to give class on Radhastami, I was really unsure. Oh, no, I was kind of had some idea in the end, but I had to be careful. And I didn't speak any pastimes of Radharani. I naturally just went in that direction of speaking more philosophy. Then I got some comments after, "Oh, you should have spoke some pastimes of Radharani." You can't please everyone. Perhaps I should have. But like in the audience were devotees who just moved into the temple just for staying over the weekend, These devotees these persons haven't even heard of Radharani. So, but then you got devotees who have been around 30 years or more, are waiting to hear some Leela of Radharani. So sometimes it may not be able to please everyone. The best place to direct the lecture generally is at the lowest common denominator. And some devotees may not appreciate that, but some devotees will be able to appreciate. But if one is specifically empowered, you will be able to say something to actually please everyone. But I wasn't specifically empowered, so I got a bit of feedback at the end, like that. So anyway, we have to be a bit selective, okay, of what we hear and what we direct other people to hear. So here's a nice little progression, if you want. It's a nice little progression is actually given there. Who in human society can be satisfied without hearing sufficient talk of the Lord, whose lotus feet are the sum total of all places of pilgrimage, and who is worshipped by great sages and devotees? Such topics can cut off one's bondage to family affection simply by entering the holes of the ears. So this is one of the results. So we need to hear Krishna's pastimes. So then which pastimes should mixed devotees hear? So these are not pure devotees. So these are devotees who are still got gross attachments to the material world, but they have an inclination towards Krishna. but they have no specific plans to actually give up their material life. Yeah, they're mixed devotees. So, but they have an attraction to Krishna. So what should they hear? Then we read here, there is no doubt that people should hear Krishna's pastimes. The indirect praise of Krishna in the Puranas and Mahabharata, for instance, did not satisfy Vidura. Yeah, this is Vidura speaking here. He wanted to hear more of Krishna's pastimes. So he approached Maitreya Muni and asked him. Yeah. So he wanted to ask, who could be satisfied without hearing talk about the Lord? You know? Rather than the histories, the details of the Puranas. Yeah. And here's a quote. Okay, let me read this. Vilas refers to the activities or pastimes of the Lord. It is a prescribed duty in temple worship that not only should one visit a temple to see the deity nicely decorated, but at the same time he should hear the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita or some similar literature which is regularly recited in the temple. So sometimes I see this, and it's interesting how it's practiced. Some like Hindus come to the temple, and they know this principle, some of them. Some of them know the principle that you don't just go and take darshan. If there's a pravachan going on, you should respectfully stay and hear. So some do that. They would take darshan, then they would sit down and respectfully hear for about 60 seconds. Then they pay their obeisances, they've done their dharma thing. They've sat down and they've listened to the sadhu or something speak about Krishna for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then they get on. So they understand this principle, but they're not really applying it fully, so Prabhupada says, there's always some literature being recited in the system in Vrindavan, that there's regular recitation of Sastra. Yeah, so even third-class devotees, with no knowledge, with no time to hear, they don't make any time. So at least they go to the temple and they hear like that. Yeah. So everyone should hear Krishna's pastimes, but to what degree and to what level one hears about them is mentioned here. And we mentioned this. And anyone remember this? 4 types of hearing way back in our classes in Suddha Bhakti Cintamani: incidental, purposeful, applied, and specific. So excuse me if I'm speaking a bit fast here. I'm trying to get through a few slides. If I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down. Any questions, of course, we're always ready. If you have any questions or discussion points, we have time for that. Yeah. So incidental hearing. Can anyone tell us what incidental hearing might be?
It's just like somebody is passing by and the car breaks down and they'll just come to see what's happening, and they'll find there's a class going on. So sit down for a little while.
Yeah, that's a nice description. The car's broken down. Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, like someone who say like we're attending like in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, we actually read through the 10th canto and we read Krishna's pastimes. We read Ras Leela, but it just wasn't, it was incidental. It wasn't purposeful. You understand? So it's, as you're hearing recital Bhagavatam, you're going to read 10th canto. So the hearing of Krishna's pastimes in the order of which it's presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. And now we're coming to 10th canto. Yeah. It's like incident. Now, purposeful hearing is where devotees will concentrate on specific pastimes. Yeah. Like, for instance, on the festival, there might be purposeful hearing of specific pastimes, like Govardhan Leela. Yeah. So that'd be purposeful hearing. Applied hearing. This is getting a bit more advanced now. This is where devotees will hear or read in order to recall what they hear and read during bhajan or during chanting the holy name of the Lord, either in kirtan or in personal japa. You understand? Apply their hearing in order to remember and meditate upon during their bhajan. Yeah. Now, Pacific hearing, that's where devotees will hear and study specifically what Krishna does throughout the day, in order so they can be absorbed in that while they're chanting his holy names. Yeah, so Astakalaya Leela. And Ramsi Prabhu spent about 6 hours today. 6 hours he was here, putting some beautiful slides together where this chapter ends describing Krishna's Astakalaya Leela. So let's see if we get there. If not, we have that to look forward to next week. So that's Pacific hearing, okay? We've got that, yeah? Okay, I'm going to miss a few notes here. Quite a few notes there. Let's just go to this slide here. So books for pure devotees. So there's, say a pure devotee, but maybe on the path of pure devotional service, but they don't have strong faith, yeah? So they should hear topics that's going to make them steady. Like, for instance, it's going to give them a level of detachment from the material world. So like Kapila Shiksha is very good for that, about the horrors of taking birth in the material world. Yeah, it's really, so now sometimes younger devotees, so what's described as neophyte devotees, the word is used, they may purposely read Krishna's pastimes occasionally or briefly, yeah, but they should avoid reading about Gopi Leela, conjugal pastimes, yeah. Yeah, as long as one is unsteady, one should develop the mood of Trinada Bisa Nityana, Taroda Pishna, Manina, Kitana Sadahari. So intermediate devotees, so Kanishta, Madhyama, yeah, their faith is strong and deep, so they can hear topics that increase their attachment to Krishna and will help to lead them to tasting bhava or ecstasy. Yeah. So these devotees should read Krishna's pastimes regularly. It should be a regular function. You should hear Krishna's Leela and pastimes. This is Madhyama devotees. Okay. That will increase, that will lead them to develop their devotional feelings. Yeah. So this is more here applied. Yeah. Applied hearing. No, good. Okay. Now, there's two types of these intermediate devotees. Now, some of them will be spontaneous devotees, meaning they have a natural eagerness for hearing about Raj Leela. Yeah, a natural eagerness is actually there. Yeah, and then we have another type is the devotees who are regulative devotees. So they hear about Krishna in order to get that eagerness, to have that same eagerness. So both this reading is what's called purposeful and applied. I hope as we're going over this, you're identifying what is appropriate for yourselves. Are any of you doing that? I hope you're concluding, this means I should read Krishna's pastimes daily. Yeah, we should, hopefully you can categorize yourselves for this.
Yes. Yes, I was thinking when you were going along,
Yeah.
how different devotees would have different angle of going
Yeah,
towards their spiritual life, different things, and everybody's got different ways of doing things.
yeah. So I would say, especially if you're steady and you are following regular the principles, and you've been doing for many years and been chanting for 10, 15 years or more, and you've been following the principles, then you should hear Krishna's pastimes regularly. You should be hearing about Krishna, reading about Krishna's pastimes in order to further develop in your actual natural attraction to Krishna. And some of you may have that natural attraction to one degree or another. Yeah. And others might not have it, but then to have it, we should hear about Krishna's wonderful, sweet pastimes. So it's more purposeful and applied. So an intermediate devotee, I'm reading here, as they advance to the stage of ruchi, their hearing may become specific. So what's specific again?
Krishna's pastimes.
Yeah, but what particular aspect of his pastimes?
Astakali
Say that again.
Lila.
Yeah, Astakali Lila, Krishna's eightfold daily pastime. Yeah. And I put an advertisement in here. Shivaram Swami is just in print now. There's a nice little small book coming out, about £15, a small book which you can carry around, which has got Gauranga's eightfold pastimes throughout the day, followed by Krishna's. Yeah,
wow,
nice.
that's going to be nice.
Yeah, so you can, if you're inspired like that, Maharaj says, if those who want to think of Krishna throughout the day, like you can read what he's doing at lunch. Now, you may be there at lunchtime, chanting a few rounds, and what's the Krishna's pastimes at lunchtime? Or like that. It's a small little book coming out, which you can easily carry around for those so inclined. So for the Pacific, for instance, there's a book called focused on Krishna's eightfold daily pastimes, for example, called the Govinda Lilamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And Shivaram Maharaj gets a lot of these pastimes, which he expands upon in his Krishna in Vrindavan series, a lot of it is coming from Govinda Lilamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And it's a very beautiful book, very sweet book. And so that's there. Also, for such devotees, Prabhupada himself recommended Krishna Bhavamrita Mahakavya. That's by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. And that again is describing Astakaliya Leela. Krishna Bhavamrita Mahakavya. Okay. So some of you might have pens and you're writing, you might be writing these down. Okay. So here's a quote from Prabhupada. Since Krishna has departed from Vrindavan and gone to Mathura, the inhabitants of Vrindavan, especially Madhya Soda, Nanda Maharaj, Srimati Radharani, the gopis and the cowherd boys were simply thinking of Krishna at every step. They were thinking, here Krishna was playing in this way. Here Krishna was blowing his flute. Krishna was joking with us in this way. And Krishna was embracing us like this. This is called Leela Smarana. Yeah. And Prabhupada continues, and it is a process of association with Krishna, most recommended by great devotees. All right. Even Lord Chaitanya, when he was in Puri, enjoyed Leela Smarana, association with Krishna. Those in the most exalted position of devotional service and ecstasy can live with Krishna by always remembering his pastimes. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has given us a transcendental literary work entitled Krishna Bhavaramrita, which is full of Krishna's pastimes. Exalted devotees can remain absorbed in Krishna thought by reading such books, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, excuse me, this is from Krishna. This is from the Krishna book. Sorry, chapter 46. So you have the, okay, some of you may hear the word exalted devotee. For that's it, okay, not for me. But and Prabhupada's use of words, we have to, Prabhupada's, you know, use of the words exalted, it shouldn't mean it's never, ever going to apply. You understand what I'm trying to say here? Don't get put off by this word.
Can we mean like the one who wants to be a bit serious in the Krishna conscious?
Yeah, as I would say, Prabhupada means an exalted devotee, as Maharaj is mentioning. You're steady. You've been steady for many years. You can happily sit down and chant the holy name of the Lord. You know, compared to those who are just coming in the door, so to speak, you have made a lot of steps, and you have to keep progressing. And this is the direction you have to go in. You know. Yeah. So we'll read again. Systematic worship of the name means to absorb the mind in these pastimes with deep faith and steady devotion. It is to the devotees with this capacity that Krishna recommends regular association of his eternal pastimes. That's from 10.9 Bhagavad Gita. Matchita makata prana bodhayanta parasparam. Yeah, the thoughts of my devotees dwell in me, their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So Maharaj mentions here that his series of books is published with the hope that these intermediate devotees will find it as valuable tool for improving their bhajan. Yeah, so Naparayaham, Krishna Sangati, Venu Gita. Yeah, he's specifically written them so the intermediate devotees can find it nourishing for their hearing and chanting. Now I'm going to skip a few notes. No, not. I'm going to go back. Yeah. Now, sorry. Now, the books we just mentioned, there are but a few of the so many books that's available to go to Lloyd's Bazaar. What's that bookshop called? Bookshop in Lloyd Bazaar. I don't know that bookshop.
Ras Bihari Lal.
Ras Bihari Lal, yes, Ras Bihari Lal. So many books there, top to bottom, hundreds of books. Yeah. So Maharaj has not listed all the books. It's not possible to list all the books and every book. You know, there's thousands of them. You know, and only a few are available in English. So, for instance, here's a partial list of some of them. Srila Rupa Goswami alone, this is just Rupa Goswami. Hamsadutta, Uddhava Sandesh, Krishna Janmatirtha Vidhi, Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika, Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Haribol. Minor, Brihat Bhagavatam Lagu, Major Lagu, Brihat Bhagavatam Lagu, Vidakta Madhava, we heard this, Sharda's mentioned this, Vidakta Madhava, Lalita Madhava, Dana Keli Kamodi, that's the tax, Krishna collecting tax from the gopis. Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu, Haribol, we read that together. Ujjvala Nilamani, that's the book that is next book after Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu. And Matoya Mahima, this is just Rupa Goswami. Pajavali. Pajavali is a collection of beautiful poems that Rupa Goswami wrote. Beautiful, Pajavali consists of different books. And Lagu Bhagavatamrita. You know, Prabhupada mentions these books in the Adi Leela in a purple. Yeah. So sometimes devotees will say, like you may hear, whether these books are necessary. Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika, you know, Dana Lalita Madhava, Vidagda Madhava, etc. They basically, one you might hear that members, we should only read Prabhupada's books, only those which Prabhupada has translated and written commentaries on. Does that sound good? Yeah, one sense, yes. But what is but if you read Prabhupada's books, then you're going to come across statements like this. This is in a letter that Prabhupada wrote. If you study Prabhupada and what he wrote about this subject, then you're going to come across this. And he says, now I'm an old man and having inclination for philosophy and translating. And if all day and night I'm reading and answering and signing letters, then I cannot utilize this, the fag end of my life, to give you so many nice literatures like the Vedas, the Upanishads, Puranas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and other books in our own Gaudiya line like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Krishna Chakravarti Thakur, and others. Yeah. So Prabhupada, if he was with us longer, he would have given us these books as well. Yeah. Now, moving on a bit. Yeah. So, and then Marge's, let me just read from here. Similarly, to understand the Vedas, the necessary qualification is that one must be a qualified Brahmana. Not that Mr. Max Muller, he has got little knowledge of Sanskrit and he translates. That kind of translation is no use. Just like so many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, without becoming devotee of Krishna, it is useless. Yeah. So these books which are out there on the market, we should be careful which books we pick up. One, we should consult perhaps with our Shiksha and Diksha Guru, but we should be careful because the translator might not be very advanced or might not be even a devotee sometimes. Yeah. It's only, Prabhupada says, only through devotional service can one understand me. How non-devotees can understand him. This is Max Muller, by the way, this picture. Okay. He has no scope to enter the knowledge. So first qualification, he must be a devotee. So before opening a new book, we should ask, what is the spiritual and technical qualification of the translator and author? So in other words, just to translate Sanskrit takes, and especially to translate Sanskrit in the mood, following the mood of Srila Prabhupada, it takes specific training and specific fidelity towards Prabhupada. So for instance, those who translate for the BBT, they're specifically chosen because of their specific devotion towards Prabhupada. Just because they can read, just because they're expert in Sanskrit, they are not going to be chosen to translate books. Yeah. So we should be careful when we see these different books, And I'm going to jump ahead. Okay. Srila Prabhupada comments. Regarding the two books you have mentioned, Sri Ramcharita Manasa by Goswami Tulsidas, it is not very authorized. And Ramayana is authorized. The author of Ramacharita Manasa, Goswami Tulsidas, has a tint of Mayavad philosophy. So not much, there's a tint. But that tint is like a black spot on a white cloth, He belongs to the Ramananda Sampradaya. They are mixed up combination of personalists and impersonalists. Therefore, the author is not considered a pure Vaishnava. So obviously this devotee is written to Prabhupada asking if they can read Ramcharita Manasa.
No, that program goes until 8 o'clock.
Which program goes to 8 o'clock? Okay, you have to, Nimai Mata, could you mute, please?
4 o'clock.
All right, let's continue. And a quote from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There are several other new books or books that were written a little later, such as Jayananda's Chaitanya Mangala, Govinda Das's Kadika, Vamsi Shiksha, Advaita Prakash, and Nityananda Vamsi Vishtara. Although it is said these books are old, we have no interest in them. They are distinct in a way that they are incorrect in their philosophical truths and conclusions. Their narrow-minded, evil intentions are obvious and highly noticeable due to the absence of any effort and proper teachings in them. The Chaitanya Charitamrita is said to be the original book, and these upper granthas, upper sampradaya, upper grantha means book. These bogus books are not recognized. So this Bhaktisiddhanta wrote in his introduction to Chaitanya Charitamrita. And
can I ask a question?
yeah, please. Yeah.
Recently I've noticed on Facebook, Madhurya Garangi has produced a book. It's called And Krishna Will. Madhurya Garangi.
Well, I've never heard of
Madhurya. She used to live in the ashram.
She lived in she's in Vrindavan.
I think you got her name on. Is it Madhurya?
Garangi.
Oh yeah, Madhurya Garangi. Okay, yeah, go on. Oh, that's that's interesting.
Yeah, and Krishna Will Kiss You also, it's called. And in the foreword, it says, the foreword was written by the Kirtan ashram. I think it's the ashram where she stays. Anyway, it's a compilation of quotes, and 90% quotes, she said, about Prabhupada talking about Raganuga Bhakti and Siddhar Swarup. And she hasn't mentioned in any of her posts that she's written it on behalf, her Guru Maharaj or by the mercy of the Vaishnavas. It's just like her book, and she's got it printed and everything. And devotees are expressing an interest in reading it. Even Devaki mentioned, like, oh, that's interesting. We'd like to see your book. And I was thinking now, how would we ascertain if this book is good for us to read?
If you already have some knowledge on the subject,
it's a very good subject.
If you're already somewhat versed in the intricacies of the subject. So, and consider this study you have done in Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, and also the study where actually you read the Nectar of Devotion. So I would say you are probably qualified in yourself to actually pass some type of judgment on that book.
Yeah.
In one sense, it's quite, I don't want to, it's quite bold of her. She's a young devotee compared to some of our senior.
It's a high subject for a young devotee. That's what I was thinking. So I'm quite apprehensive about getting into it.
Yeah, so therefore that, I wouldn't do this. I would flick through some pages to get an understanding what it's about, but I wouldn't do a study in it myself. I've got, my Guru Maharaj's books is like, I don't need to.
We have so many Vaishnava books anyway on the subject.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So this book is quite, this slide is quite apt.
Yeah.
There's so many books raining down on our society. So that's a good example. Sorry,
she didn't say, oh, I've written this as an offering to my Guru Maharaj or anything like that. It doesn't seem to be connected with anything,
Yeah. So
official.
Without, so I would, therefore I would trust your own discrimination in that regard.
Yeah.
And have some I would rather wait till I hear what devotees say about it. Wait 2 months or 3 months or 4 months.
Yeah.
And then let's just see what our senior devotees will say about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. That's an example. The raining books.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Even other acharyas' books, I heard Swami Maharaj was saying, if you are doubtful or anything, first read all Srila Prabhupada books. If you have time, then you ask your Guru Maharaj which books I should read. Don't just jump in and then you get caught up and then you get confused afterwards. So
yeah, that's Nitai Mat has given some very good advice there. So Lavanga Malatika, I don't know, you might send a letter. Your Guru Maharaj does. He's quite active in answering questions online.
because
Yeah.
Swami Maharaj. That's what Swami Maharaj
Yeah.
replied.
Yeah, so that's generally good practice. I mean that's what I
Yeah,
do. Or-
Yeah.
I don't have time to read it because I have a list of books that I have yet
Yeah,
to
so,
read.
yeah, so you
Um,
don't have any. Yeah, so you're not probably.
But I was
It's
just
not.
wondering, generally, like, you know, if someone approached you with a book, like, would
I
you
know she's
say,
my god
well,
sister, but still, I will not take a risk of reading where there are so many books I should read before reading that book.
Yeah. So there's a book to be a little bit careful about,
Yeah.
as an example. You know, let's just keep it like that. I mean, I don't want to speak badly of it or her. Let's just keep it like that. You know. So I hope we don't. We've got 10 minutes left, and this is we might go a little bit over time today. I hope you don't mind. But it's got to be worth it because I would. Bumsy has done a lot of work on this on these slides, so I thought it'd be good to share that today. But so anyway, we have to some type of level of discrimination for our hearing. You know, I mean, there's quite a few books which I know some of the devotees have written, but I just won't read them. I have no planning on reading. I mean, I won't give specific names, but some of my contemporary devotees who are saying, I'd keep it like that. You know? Of course, I've got Prabhupada's books, as you know, we've got so many books, Prabhupada's books. There's just hardly time to read Prabhupada's books, isn't there? Let alone all these other books. Anyway, so let's. So we should choose books that will inspire our Krishna consciousness, and not ones that will impede it in some way. Yeah, let me read here to save time. Proper education is the best system of checks and balances. That's what is my immediate answer to Mavalamanga's question. Education, to be somewhat educated in the principles of bhakti, in rasa tattva, things like that, is also the best means to protect ISKCON's members from indiscriminate reading of a multitude of books currently raining down on our society. This picture, I think, is very funny. This book is an effort, this Suddha Bhakti Cintamani is an effort to provide such education. So it's written with the help that it will help devotees to make hearing, chanting, and remembering bhajan their life breath of their Krishna consciousness. Okay. So that more or less we finished there on our Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, just before coming up to 5.2. Now, Maharaj then speaks a little bit on systematic worship applied to hearing. So he quotes Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is Asta Kaliya, so applied hearing. And there's one book called, there's another book called Bhajan Rahasya. So there, Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about the systematic bhajan for devotees. So Maharaj, Shiva Maharaj has got a lot. He's used a lot of this book, Bhajan Rahasya, in here in the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani.
Prabhu, just to mention, we are doing that book with Nama Sankirtan, Prabhu.
Sorry?
We are doing that book with Nama Sankirtan, Prabhu.
Oh, really? You're doing that book? Very interesting.
Yes.
Oh, Bhajan Rahasya. Very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, how'd you find it? It's very
We're
good.
just going to start next week, actually. We're
Last
going to start next week.
So that's very interesting. That's nice.
one.
Bhajan Rahasya. So there you go. Yeah. So yeah, that will be a study on Shishastakam as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He sent the book. We're reading it.
Yeah, so different verses. Shiva Maharaj gave a seminar on this a few months ago, or last year, the different levels of spiritual achievement, and how it correlates to each of the verses in the Shishastaka. Yeah, that's Nam Sankirtan, one of his favorite studies. So wonderful. That's really good to hear, So yeah, there's more about Bajrang Rahasya, those who want to understand the path of pure worship. Scrolling down here.
Can I quickly ask a question?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because we kind of studying or hearing all this kind of philosophy, then when you go to classes, sometimes you kind of switch off with other classes. Is that the right thing? It's kind of, distracting, really.
Yeah, in one sense, we have to learn to be like Paramahamsas. We have to learn to get nectar from wherever it's coming. So you're going to get a devotee, say, who's, you've been around 30 years and then 35 years, 40 years, and the devotee's been around 3.5 years is going to give class. So you might not get exactly what you would choose to, but you should have great respect. You should, I think you mentioned before yourself, Mother Chandravali, how you can, if we have the right.
Yeah, you can. You can. But
Something
you kind of.
but like in our own spare time, in our own choice of time, in our own bhajan, then we may go in different directions. But like incidentally, hearing in say a temple on a regular basis, different devotees will get class. And it's only natural you're going to feel specifically enlivened about one devotee and another devotee just to be more patient with, give them, let them, give them, be charitable and show an eagerness to hear. And then you're going to be different, like when your Guru Maharaj is giving class, all your senior devotees are going to be like glued to their every word with keen enthusiasm. That's just natural thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So now Maharaj finishes the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani with some verses from Rupa Goswami describing Krishna's Ashtakalya Leela. It's called Sri Radha Krishna Smarana Mangala Stotra. Yeah. Now Maharaj mentions that or immature, unsteady devotees should offer respects to these verses from a distance. Yeah. More advanced devotees should try to memorize them. And more realized devotees, they can discuss them while chanting the glories of the Lord. Yeah, and to remain constantly absorbed in the thoughts of them. So that's our goal. This is where we want to go in our hearing and chanting. Yeah. Then Maharaj finishes with, may all these classes of devotees be pleased with this book, and may they bestow their blessings on its insignificant author. Okay. So that finishes chapter 30, except for the verses. So now let me, 1 second, do something here, something else. Okay, what do you see? Someone has to tell me.
Just a blue,
Nothing really, just like a picture, nothing
blue
really.
color picture with
Oh,
lotuses on it.
okay.
Lotus.
Right, so now we're gonna go through this book of Rupa Goswami. It's only 8 verses, so we might go over a couple of minutes. So let's just to make it more, I think I will take the liberty of reading these verses. So this is our goal. This is what we want to be absorbed in ultimately in our Krishna consciousness. Okay, we're okay for this. Let's see if it works. Oh, now nothing's happening. Okay, yeah. 1 second, I'm going to do some technical things here.
Did lots of lotus flowers.
Yeah, excuse me. Share sound.
Oh,
It starts here. Srila Radha Krishna.
Jaya Radhe Jaya Krishna
Sri Radha Krishna smarana mangala stotra. Verse 1. Again, this is Astic Kalaya Lila. At the end of night, Vrinda, fearful of the approach of fatehood, wanted the parrot and the minya to awaken Radha and Krishna. As though the birds sang sweetly, their songs were not at all pleasing, for they awakened Radha and Krishna from their sleep. The Asakis watched from a distance as the divine couple stirred, looking very charming because of the deep love and affection they shared at that moment. Being suspicious of the voice of the she-monkey, Kakhati, and desirous to continue their association, they gazed longingly at each other. Radha and Krishna then reluctantly departed for their respective homes, where they quietly lay down in their own beds. I take shelter of Srimati Radharani. After finishing her ablution and ornamenting her body, Radharani responds to the early morning call of Madhya Stotra. Radha, along with her girlfriends, then goes to the house of Madhya Stotra and prepares varieties of delicious foodstuffs that are offered to Krishna. Radharani then eats Krishna's remnants. During this time, she occasionally gets a chance to meet Krishna. I also take shelter of Krishna. After rising from his bed early in the morning, Krishna first goes to the cowherd shed to milk the cows. Following his daily routine, he then returns home, and after taking bath, takes his meals in the company of his cowherd friend. I remember Sri Krishna, who in the forenoon goes to the forest, followed by the cowherd boys and the cows. Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, and the other Vrajvasis also follow along. Being anxious to meet Radharani, Krishna leaves the cowherd boys and cows behind and comes to the banks of Radhakund. I also remember Srimati Radharani, who returns to her home from Nandagaon after she has caught a glimpse of Krishna's signal, indicating their future meeting. Her mother-in-law Jatila orders her to worship the sun god. Radharani casts her eyes down the pathway, of which her Sakis will return with the news about Krishna's location, for which she eagerly awaits. I remember Radha and Krishna who enjoy each other's company at midday. They are both decorated with different types of ecstatic symptoms such as Asta Saptaka and Vyapachari. Their eyes show symptoms of opposition, then eagerness, as they become unsteady in their loving affair. They are pleased by the jokes of Lalita and the other Sakis, and surrounded by these friends, they become eager to engage in sports such as swimming, roaming in the forest, playing in the water, hiding Krishna's flute, lovemaking, drinking honey, and worshipping the sun god. I remember Srimati Radharani, who in the afternoon returns to her home and prepares many sweets such as Amrita Keli and Kapura Keli for her beloved Sri Krishna. After bathing and dressing in beautiful clothes and ornaments, she is filled with ecstasy, seeing the lotus face of her beloved Sri Krishna as he returns from the forest to the cow pen. I also remember Sri Krishna, who returns home in the afternoon to Nandagram, along with his cows and cow boyfriend. As they arrive on the path, he feels satisfied glancing at Srimati Radharani. After meeting with Nanda and the other elders, he is then bathed and dressed by Mother Yasoda. In the evening, Sri Radha sends her girlfriends with many exquisite sweet preparations for her beloved Krishna. When her friends return to Krishna's remnants, Radha becomes very happy by tasting those remnants. Rajendra Krishna plays at home and is then very nicely dressed. His Mother Yasoda lovingly attends him. Krishna then goes to the cow pen and after milking the cows, again returns home, taking his meal with great happiness. I remember these pastimes with affection. I remember Sri Radha in the late evening. She dresses herself in clothes suitable for the dark and light fortnight, for the pleasure of Krishna. In accordance with Vrinda's advice, she takes shelter in a secluded bower on the banks of the Yamuna in the company of her Saki Mista. I also remember Krishna sitting in an assembly of cowherd boys and watching their various feats. His affectionate mother, Yasoda, brings him home and attempts to put him to sleep. Remembering the company of Radha, he soon quietly slips out of bed and leaves for the forest bower. I remember Radha and Krishna, who at night are anxious for each other's company. After they meet, Vrinda Devi serves them in various ways. As they roam throughout the forest, Radha and Krishna appear very charming with their sakis as they sing and dance in their rasa pastimes. Coming fatigued from their sportive activities, they are served by their many loving friends, manjaris. As the night ends, they lie on the bed of flowers where they sleep. The sakis drown in an ocean of ecstasy as they observe these pastimes. Jai Hare Krishna.
Ouch. Brilliant.
Immature devotees may offer their
Ouch.
respect to these verses from a distance. Advanced devotees should try to remember them, and realized devotees, no doubt, discuss these verses while chanting great ecstasy, remaining constantly absorbed in thought of them. Hare Krishna. Haribol, hope you all like that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, okay. So thank you, everyone. So next week will be, as I mentioned, will be the last two, or part 5 is a story. So we'll read that together. I'm not sure how we'll do that, but we got that to look forward to next week. So any last comments from anyone? Otherwise we're finished there.
Feel like want to do again, Prabhu.
Yeah, I mean, it's here. I can make it, well, we can. Okay, let's just repeat it till 8 o'clock. Nice, no? You can thank Vamsivat put this together.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, so very nice way to end, very sweet way to end. This is the goal. This is what we want to resolve in. instead of the nasty things in this material world, isn't it? So many unpleasant, nasty things going on here. You know, let's absorb ourselves in the activities of the spiritual world. Okay, without further ado,
Thank you, Murli
let's
Prabhu.
stop
It
here.
was wonderful class.
Thank you, everyone.
And
Look forward to
His
being with you
Grace
tomorrow.
Murli Prabhu ki jai.
Of
Thank
instruction.
you.
Very much.